Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay, or is it too loud? It's okay? All right. Thank you for being here today to celebrate the life of Brenda Glazer. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Carol, and I'm Brenda's cousin. I'll be your MC for today. Could I just ask that before we get started, if you have a cell phone with you, could you make sure that it's on silence? Thanks. Your presence here today means so much to all of us, particularly Brenda's family. I'm sure Brenda would be very pleased to know each and every one of you are here or watching virtually to celebrate her beautiful life well lived. Brenda was very talented in many ways. For example, the music you're enjoying here today are two of Brenda's favorite pieces. Not only did she enjoy listening to Mozart and Beethoven, but she also enjoyed playing both of those pieces we'll hear today. She was a published author, mentor, educator, chef, language buff, just to name a few of her many talents. Brenda's predecessed by her dad, Dr. George Hardy, her brother Cam. She leaves behind her 101-year-old mom, Jean Hardy, her sister Pam, her husband Hugh, sister-in-law Louise, Cam's wife, who's been like the third sister for the past 50 years, and many nieces and nephews and others she named special specifically when she wrote her own story about her own life. She also leaves behind her best friend and her husband of 50 years, Joe, and their son Mike and his wife Kara. I'd like to call on Joe and Mike now to come up and pay a special tribute to your mom and your wife. Joe, Mike? Oh, Mike, you're not coming up? Okay. Elaine's coming up with Joe. Okay. All right, you're coming up after. All right. Okay.
He's got his own little thing.
All right.
Again, thank everybody for coming. I hope everybody can bear with me. This is very difficult for me.
It's okay. That's okay. We've done this before.
and I'm hoping to get through this without becoming a blubbering idiot. I asked Elaine, our longtime friend, to come up with me, provide support, and read my eulogy if I'm unable to continue. I'm going to give it the old college try. A couple of months ago, I sat down with Brenda and asked her if she would write her own eulogy, own obit rather. She agreed, and if you had a chance to read it, I think you would agree that she did a fabulous job. Nothing what I would have written would have done her justice. I will try not to just repeat what she has already said so eloquently. Pam, Louise, and I sat down soon after Brenda passed and tried to decide who could give the best eulogy. We were unanimous in our decision. It should be Brenda. She was the best writer, best speaker. She would have done a wonderful job. Unfortunately, we can't do that, so I'll have to try and channel my inner Brenda instead. Wish me luck. Brenda and I met over 50 years ago in Ghana, West Africa. It has been an amazing journey since then. World travel, most of Europe, England, Ireland, Scotland, East and West Africa, Turkey, Australia, New Zealand. We had planned to travel extensively in retirement, but our illness prevented us from doing this. Still, we had a great life together. No regrets, great careers, wonderful son, great friends. It does not get better. I don't want to bore you with describing all of our travels, but I do want to mention two memorable ones for me. East Africa. We went on safari in Kenya and Tanzania. Hugh and Pam accompanied us on this trip. We had a fabulous guide from the Calgary Zoo to provide tons of useful information. We saw thousands of animals, had great accommodations, and ate wonderful food. Brenda was famous for not wanting her picture taken. There were always pictures of me enjoying the sights, but none of Brenda. Our friends would always ask me if I went on vacation by myself. This vacation was different because Pam was there and took many pictures, and even managed to capture Brenda on a few. Having some pictures of Brenda on a vacation are priceless. Thanks, Pam. After the safari, we decompressed before flying back with 3 days in Diani Beach in Kenya. That was glorious. Then our trip to Grand Canyon. This one's going to be tough. This was our last trip together. We went to the Grand Canyon in November to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary. Brenda was having mobility issues at the time, so our activities were somewhat limited. We had a beautiful suite in the El Tovar Hotel right on the south rim of the canyon. We relaxed on the patio, drank wine, had nice dinners in the hotel, and went on a glorious helicopter ride over the canyon. I will always remember this trip. Another thing crossed off the bucket list. I also wanted to mention our many trips to Cannon Beach, Oregon. This is a special place for both of us because of how much our two dogs, Gypsy and Delta, enjoyed the beach. They ran joyously along the beach the whole time we were there. They sulked for days after we left. Now I just want to address some qualities that made Brenda such a great person. First, her friends. I apologize in advance if I forget anybody. I'm not thinking very clearly these days. Brenda had an amazing number of long-term friends. Her childhood friends. She has maintained deep friendships with several of her friends from elementary school. Leslie, Kathleen, and Marilyn. All these wonderful ladies provided incredible support during her illness. Visiting, talking on the phone, providing care packages, mostly for me. I can't thank you enough. Africa. Carol, Lois, and Helen. None of them are here today, but I hope they're watching. She has not seen much of these ladies for the last 50 years because we live thousands of miles apart. However, she kept in constant contact through letters, emails, texts, and phone calls. She met all of them in Accra, Ghana. Lois and Helen both lived in the same house and taught in the same secondary school. The house had no running water, but it did have a well and an outhouse and back. I think living in these conditions really helps with female bonding. Carol lived in a neighboring village and would come for visits. Brenda really loved you all. She really needed the support you supplied during her illness. The Gourmet Girls, Pam, Cindy, Glenda, Sherry, Pat, Diane, another long relationship. Great food, great wine, great camaraderie. Some of the gourmet dinners were legendary. I benefit from leftovers from these events. I don't want to slight everybody else, but I want to especially thank Cindy for her desserts. They were fabulous. Even the spouses were invited once a year at Christmas. Great times. All of you communicated with Brenda and brought over care packages, again, mainly for me, during her illness. Again, thank you. I will be saying this often today because all Brenda's friends are so great. Mount Royal, Elaine, Lorna, Mary Ann, Cecilia, Myrna, Giovanna, and Karen, and probably others I have unfortunately forgotten. Elaine is my oldest friend in Calgary. She is mainly responsible for the start of Brenda's career. Brenda was working in a bookstore at Mount Royal College when Elaine walked in, remembered her from university, and said something to the effect, "What the hell are you doing working here? We need ESL teachers. You speak English, you have a degree, you're perfect." And thus began Brenda's teaching career. Elaine also introduced Brenda to several of her passions, cryptic crosswords, Sudoku, and jigsaw puzzles. Those activities got Brenda through the last couple of years. Elaine also tried to teach Brenda bridge, but that never worked. And she eventually had to settle for second best and used me as her bridge partner.
Not second best.
Lorna has been a fixture in Brenda's life, always coming over to have tea and bullshit for hours. I will talk about these teas more later. Mary Ann. Brenda did not see much of Mary Ann the last couple of years because she was either at our houses in France or in the Okanagan. However, they did talk on the phone. In fact, they currently hold the Guinness record for the longest phone call. Well done, ladies. Brenda loved talking to you and getting an update on your life. Book clubs. Brenda loved her book clubs. She belonged to ones in Elbow Valley and Mesa. She really enjoyed the people and the lively discussion. It was a special day for her when the Mesa Book Club used her book, Nor Me Without You, for the monthly discussion. She could not have been more pleased. I'm sorry that I do not know all the book club members. I can just say that she loved you all. Christine and Deanna, a special thanks to you. You were not part of any of Brenda's groups, but you were always there for visits, care packages, again, maybe for me, and telephone calls. You were great. I am sorry to tell you both that you never came close to Brenda and Mary Ann's phone call record. Now I want to talk a little bit about her quirkiness. Most people know that Brenda had some interesting quirks. Maybe quirks is not the right word. Let's say endearing qualities. Brenda was a voracious reader and was not to be disturbed in the morning until she had her coffee and read the paper. Sometimes, actually often, some article would disturb her. She would puff her chest, point her finger in the air, and state, "I feel a letter coming on." Over the years, she wrote many letters to the Herald. Because she was such a good writer, many of the letters were published. I think she was a larger contributor than some of the beat reporters. As an aside, I have also written letters to the Herald and have yet to get one published. I am not bitter at all. She will probably haunt me for telling the next story. Brenda did not get her driver's license until she was 27 or 28. She really did not like driving and realized that in Calgary, driving was a necessity. Her first car was a VW Beetle with a stick shift. It had a gas heater to warm the car in the winter. You could always smell gasoline when the heater was on, and I was nervous the car would blow up. So for the next winter, we got her a new car, a Renault. She loved that car, but its purchase brought up one of her endearing qualities. Shortly after getting the Renault, I had to follow her to a friend's house. Brenda had to sit down and think before we started. She hated making left turns. So she had to plot a course with the fewest number of left turns. As an aside, my son recently told me that UPS drivers also avoid left turns because it is a more efficient way to deliver packages. Maybe Brenda was onto something. Once her route was imprinted in her brain, we set off. Almost immediately, we came to the first turn. Brenda put her right blinker on and proceeded to turn left. Okay, I thought. She was nervous about the left-hand turn and just put the wrong blinker on. Shortly, we came to another turn. Her left blinker comes on and Brenda turns right. We repeated to 2 more turns with her left blinker flashing away and Brenda turning right. We arrived at our destination, thankfully safely. I got out of the car and asked her why she kept signaling
I
opposite
don't
to
think you said it like that. I can't imagine you saying
That's
that.
exactly the way I said it. I thought I probably said
You
it
would have
nicer
said,
than that.
oh, yeah, okay, all right, fine.
I got out of the car and asked her why she was signaling opposite to the way she went. I did not, she said. I lifted up on the turn signal to turn right and down on the turn signal to turn left, the same as on my VW. Unfortunately, the VW turn signal was on the left side of the steering column, and there are no turning signals on the right side of the steering wheel. Think about it. You can't fault her logic. I guess that shows the difference between a scientific mind and how a scientific mind thinks and how an artistic mind thinks. Even after 50 years, she continually surprised me with her perception of the world. It was unique. I want to talk a little bit about her caring. A lot of Brenda's caring centered around our second dog, Gypsy. Gypsy was a lovely black lab, the most gentle and empathic dog. Brenda enrolled her in the PALS program, and over a 5-year period, she would take Gypsy into hospitals and old age homes to provide comfort for the people there. I am sure Gypsy would provide some comfort, but I think the greatest comfort came from talking to Brenda. She would talk to whoever wanted to talk, find out about their lives, and generally provide a break to take their minds off their problems. She was great at this and really enjoyed this part of her life. It was amazing how much Brenda found out about people. She knew the life story of her massage therapist, hairstylist, pedicurist, cleaning lady. She loved to talk to these people and was generally curious and cared about other people's lives. It was never about her. Talent. I think everybody knows about Brenda's writing. She wrote 4 books, and they were her babies. Over the last couple of months, she would always have one of the books beside her on the bed, reading through to try and find errors. She was making corrections in the book up till the last week. Ever the perfectionist. As an aside, I have read all her books, and as an unbiased critic, I thoroughly enjoyed each one. I recommend that after this service, you all go on Amazon and purchase a copy. That's the end of my sales pitch. What most people don't know is that after retirement, Brenda became a very accomplished pianist. Some of the pieces in the music selection for today are pieces she loved and mastered over time. It was very sad for me that she stopped playing the piano over the last year. Piano playing was really a passion for her. Mike, she was so proud of you. You were a joy to raise. We could not ask for more. Mike is a very successful computer engineer who lives in Portland with his lovely wife, Kara, and my 2 grand doggies, Maddie and Izzy. There is an interesting story of how he arrived in Portland. As you probably know, Brenda and I lived there in the early 70s while she went to Portland State, and I worked as a cereal chemist in a flour mill. For anyone chuckling, that's cereal with a C, not an S. Mike was living in San Francisco and worked as a computer engineer for a company based in Palo Alto. He met Kara there where she worked as a TV reporter for one of the local stations. They married in 2014, and soon thereafter he transferred to London and Paris for 2 years. When they relocated back to San Francisco, they discovered that buying a house that they liked there was impossible due to cost. They started investigating other areas to live in. Since Mike has always worked remotely, his company did not care where he lived as long as he was on a direct flight to San Francisco. For what I think was providential reasons, they chose Portland. They moved there in 2017 and bought a lovely condo. Brenda and I went to visit shortly after they moved in. As we drove up to the condo, my first comment was that this really looked familiar, a real sense of deja vu. It turned out that they had bought a condo right next door to the apartment we lived in 1973. They could look into our old apartment from their balcony. What are the chances? Small world. They have since bought a bigger house about a mile away. Mike is now working for a company based in Southern California, and Kara has retired from reporting and is actively volunteering for charitable organizations, gardening, looking after my 2 grand doggies, and doing what Brenda really appreciated, making sure Mike does not spend 24/7 in front of the computer. Kara, thank you for that. We both appreciate it. As Brenda said, sing no sad songs for her. She checked all the boxes and had a successful life that she lived with honesty, integrity, and curiosity. Before I end, Lorna, I said that I would get back to you. As everybody's probably aware, the tea gathering was not for tea, but for a single malt scotch. If you have do you have a bottle?
She has. She's got it all organized.
Excuse me, excuse
Yes,
me.
okay.
You have it up here already. Oh, I don't even have to open my bottle. So if you can bear with us, we're going to have a cup of tea.
So Brenda and I, just to make sure you understand, we aren't alcoholics or anything. We had this ritual that we developed during the time that we were both being treated at the Tom Baker. We had our tea parties. So we took turns. One time Brenda came to our place, another time I came to their place, and we had our tea. We had these lovely teacups given to us by our mothers, of course. And we both enjoyed a fine brand of tea called Glenfiddich. So Joe...
I thought you were unhappy.
No.
No?
So
What do I know?
we would steep the tea for a few seconds.
Yeah, I don't drink as much as you.
It's not a competition. And we would let it steep for a moment or two. And then we would sip for the afternoon, and not what you said, talk bullshit, but we would...
Did I say bullshit?
Yes, you did. We would solve the problems of the world. We would have wonderful tea parties. And so, wait a second. Then finally, we realized this was a farce. So we changed to proper Scotch glasses. We may as well come out of the closet. So, but we had to have the proper kind of Scotch glass, not just any old glass. So she had one and I had one, and we continued. But as part of our legacy to Brenda, shall we join her in a toast?
Yes, to Brenda.
To Brenda, to a
Thank you,
toast. You're welcome.
And I really needed that.
So can I take my tea back to my...
You can.
And you stay here with me.
Yeah, before Mike comes up, Elaine's going to have a few
yeah,
words to say
right.
too.
Just a
Yeah.
second, can I move it?
Yes, please, yeah.
Do you want some more scotch?
Can you put the teacup thing down, saucer? Yes, in case it falls off.
This is a bit confusing because they had sort of said, would I give a eulogy? And I said, oh no, I don't speak in public, so I won't give a eulogy, but I'll come up and perhaps I'll say a few words. So that's why I'm not in the program, which is just great for me. Anyways, I did want to say some things about Brenda because she was a very dear friend of mine for over 55 years. Kind of shows how old we're all getting. And part of this is because we had such similar lives. Both of us were born in 1949, so I've always called us the 49ers. Joe is of that group too. And later on this week, he's going to become the same age as me. So I'm very happy about that.
I'm not that old yet.
Yeah, he's not that old yet. Both Brenda and I went to the University of Calgary. We took languages, and we met in a linguistics class. After graduation, she went to Africa, and I went on to a graduate degree in linguistics. And then I got a job at the new Mount Royal College, which had just moved to Lincoln Park campus. You know, and I was pretty proud of myself. She came back from Africa, actually having done something, but she couldn't get a job right away. So she got a job at the bookstore. And when I went down to the bookstore, I saw her there loading books on the shelf. And I think I did indeed say, what in the hell are you doing here? You should be working. Okay, so Brenda and I shared a love of language. We shared a love of pets, and particularly Labrador retrievers. And in fact, we became related when she got Gypsy, because Gypsy was my dog Duffy's half-sister. So that made us something. We could never really figure out what we were to each other, but we were something. And we had many social gatherings with Brenda and Joe. We ate, we drank, we played games. In the late 1990s, in 1990, my late husband and I moved from Calgary to Springbank. And guess who followed? It was the Glazers. Okay, that was great. We bought a winter home in 2009 in Arizona, and shortly thereafter, there came the Glazers. They never followed us to the Okanagan, though, when we retired there in 2003, because Brenda had decided that the Okanagan was a really hot place. It was just way too hot for her, and she couldn't tolerate the heat. So she rarely would come out to visit, but she did once in a while, but we kept in very close touch. We would talk on the phone for a very long time, but maybe not as long as Marianne and her. So that was great. And I want to add some of my own experiences with Brenda to some of the categories that Joe has already talked about, because he had asked me if I would read this. So I realized that the categories were great, but he'd forgotten a lot of stuff. So one of the things that I first thought about when Brenda died, and I started to write notes, is she didn't used to say, I feel a letter coming on. For me, it was, I feel a memo coming on. So it was a memo because we both worked at Mount Royal, and we had similar reactions to what we thought of as, what a bunch of bureaucratic crap that is. So, you know, we didn't appreciate that. So I was too lazy to do anything about this bureaucratic crap, but Brenda would, and she wrote many memos to the perpetrators of this nonsense. She continued her whole life to be concerned about what was going on around her. I was amazed many years ago when she wrote a memo to some transportation person at the city of Calgary because a yield sign on Sarcee had become a merge. This troubled her greatly. I was also amazed that she remained so interested in what was going on around her. And we talked about politics a lot. I'd phone her up, we'd talk a bit about, you know, what horrible thing they were doing to her, and then we'd get on to what really interested us, like politics. And I was amazed that she went out to vote in the last federal election, which wasn't all that long ago. Okay, Joe talked about her driving. And I remember, I knew her for many years before she could ever drive. And when she got her license, I often thought, Brenda, you shouldn't have. I'm kind of a nervous passenger, but I became more nervous driving with her because she didn't have those years of experience. Like when I was 16, I got my license as fast as I could, but Brenda didn't. So she drove too fast, she used her brake too much, but she did love her cars. And in fact, I think I see one of her cars out in the parking lot, don't I? Her funny little car? No. Oh, she always had funny little cars. Like, why would anybody buy a Renault? You know, that was sort of the feeling that I had. And she did name her cars, was the other thing that she did. And I think one of them was named Henry?
That was the Volkswagen.
Oh, that was the Volkswagen, okay. I don't know what they all were. Okay. Now, Joe didn't mention, this is kind of part of her quirkiness, is what I have quoted, Glazer attacks. And this is a word that's very useful in my life. Brenda was very careful about how she spent money. If her checking account got below a certain level, she would have what we termed a Glazer attack. This has become a word that I use in my life now when I'm feeling uncomfortable about the amount of money I have been spending. So think about it. It might be a useful word for many people. I'm having a Glazer attack. The interesting thing about Glazer attacks is that the level changed quite a bit over the years. At first, a Glazer attack would occur if her checking account got below perhaps $500. Toward the end, I think it was $10,000. So higher, okay. She really wanted a lot of money in her checking account. And now, one thing I found strange about someone who had Glazer attacks was how Brenda dealt with buying groceries. She told me this was her routine. She would go to the grocery store, and she would first go to the bank machine and withdraw the amount of money that she thought she was going to spend on groceries. Then she would go and carefully kind of tabulate and select her groceries, trying not to go over the amount of cash she had withdrawn. This seemed kind of weird to me, so I asked her why she didn't just use the, Interact machine at the teller or whatever, or at the cashier, and then she wouldn't have to worry about that. And she said she had no idea, but that's what she wanted to do. But what really bothered me, and I also learned really bothered Joe, was that she used a generic bank machine, which for us is horror of horrors. You pay a service charge. So why would she do that? So we found that very strange behavior for someone who suffered Glazer attacks. Okay, Joe had a category called talent. And when Joe spoke of Brenda's talents, he did a great job, but he didn't mention her cooking skills. She loved to cook and fuss about food. Over the years, we had wonderful meals at their place, complete with fancy appetizers, main courses, and desserts. She was a very hard act to follow, and I finally just gave up trying. I'm not going to do this anymore. I did manage over the years to get some recipes, and we were just talking about this last night, about some of the recipes that we, like friends, still make, and they were recipes from Brenda's collection. And one thing, when you went to Glazer's for supper and had something delicious and you commented on it, you would never get that again. It just would not happen. And I said, why can't we ever have that again? She said, no, I've served it once, I keep track of it, and you'll never have it again. So it's good I have those recipes. Now, here's a weird thing about Brenda. She liked, well, it's not weird, she liked to make special food for special occasions. She was always catering to Joe.
Not really.
Yeah, she was. And asked him when it was his birthday. So, you know, this would have already been decided for this year. And unfortunately, somebody else is going to have to do that. What he would like for food, or American Thanksgiving. She was, you know, we don't celebrate American Thanksgiving, but she catered to Joe and said he would like American Thanksgiving. What would you like for American Thanksgiving? So Joe would come up with his list. And his list was really quite simple. It would often include things like brownies, he loves chocolate, pumpkin pie, roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, but he always complained he never got what he asked for. Never. Because she cared so much, she always went a little bit further than what he asked for, so that the brownie became some sort of elaborate chocolate dessert. The pumpkin pie might become a pumpkin bourbon cheesecake. The roast turkey might be a stuffed turkey roll. The mashed potatoes never happened because Brenda had this bizarre idea that she couldn't make mashed potatoes. Like, who can't make mashed potatoes? So as a result of that, they had a lot more rice. And of course, who wants gravy with rice? So it kind of, you know. Anyways, Joe complained, but I don't think he really much.
The apple pie was the worst.
What happened with the apple pie?
The apple pie was the worst.
What happened with it? What did it become?
It became a apple kind of
Souffle or something like that?
With a peach topping or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you just wanted apple pie. So Joe complained. He's still complaining, but I don't think he really minded. Okay. Joe, he liked to be the center of attention. Joe didn't mention that she produced a series of beautiful professional calendars. And I looked in my cupboard the other day, and I still had 3 of them. Unfortunately, when I left Arizona, I had some down there. And I had one, I think she began doing this in about 2010, and they were really beautiful. One of them was simply appies, and these were all recipes that she had used with the Gourmet Girls and made a collection of the best. And they were really good recipes. Another one focused on mains, another one focused on starters and salads. I still have and will treasure these calendars, which were beautifully photographed and designed by Shannon. And I'm not sure, are you Shannon? Shannon, her niece, and James was the photographer. So it was a nice family thing, and they were beautiful. Okay, now there was a category of caring, and I'd like to elaborate on that. She cared a lot about her friends. She always remembered birthdays. She'd send me an anniversary card, and I'll think, oh, yeah, this is sort of around the same time. I forgot about it. She'd send a card. I always got a kick out of how she signed them over the years. Some of the first ones would have said, love from B, J, Mike, and Samantha. Samantha was their first dog. The next years might have said something like, love from B, J, Mike, Samantha, and Gypsy. They added to the family. When Mike went away to university, the cards were signed, Love, B, J, and Gypsy. In a few years, they were signed Love, B, J, Gypsy, and capital BTN. BTN. Toward the end, they were signed Love, B, J, and something. BTN referred to Delta, who was their last black lab, who was really Joe's dog. And it meant better than nothing. So she wouldn't even write her name, BTN, better than nothing. And when Gypsy died,
This is an aside. Delta was the most wonderful dog.
Right. But Gypsy was pretty wonderful because we'd go for walks together. And it really bugged Brenda that Gypsy would heal me and not her. For some reason, she just healed me. Anyways, when Gypsy died, BTN, better than nothing, became something. So at least she could write something on the card, but she didn't ever write Delta. Okay, Brenda was very generous. You didn't mention her generosity. For many years, we exchanged gifts at birthdays and Christmas. This became a bit of a chore because our birthdays, mine's in January, hers is in December, and Christmas is in December, so it was too much present buying. This is a lot of gifts to buy. When we moved to the Okanagan, we had to mail the gifts to each other. So at one point, I suggested we eliminate birthday gifts, which she agreed to. We still continue with the Christmas gift. And I managed to get mine muled to Calgary, because I was too cheap to send it, with someone who was going in November or December. Brenda continued to use Canada Post, and I was always amazed that the postage cost about the same amount as the gift, which seems strange for someone who was prone to Glazer attacks. To simplify gift buying, we agreed that we would exchange just a calendar and a jigsaw puzzle. So we did that for many years. However, Brenda always added what she termed a little something extra. This was always something lovely from one of her trips. So I had to try and figure out what my little something extra would be. And it was a real chore because I didn't go on her kinds of trips and I wasn't talented like that. So then we brought it down to a jigsaw puzzle and a calendar. She agreed to stop the little something. So I don't know who's going to take over that role at Christmas. Maybe you will. You could send me a jigsaw puzzle and a calendar.
What do you think the chances of that happening?
Yeah, I don't think so, yeah. Yeah, and on the topic of Christmas, I was cleaning out some of my cupboard the other day, or a month or so ago, and I came across a bunch of the Glazer Gazettes. And for some reason, I saved them all, and they are wonderful. If any of you received the Glazer Gazette at Christmas, it wasn't your silly Christmas letter like, we did this and we did that. It was all written headline form with pictures. It was funny, it was well done, and totally original. And I've kept them all, and I will treasure them. My last category in the end of this speech is the category of language, which Joe didn't mention. But Brenda and I both loved language, and we both went into languagey type of things. We shared a love of crosswords, and then we moved on to cryptic crosswords. We both invented languages, and we invented sounds that we only used with our pets. These pet languages often involved special words for only our pets and special sounds. For example, doggy became diggy. My boy, who I have, would become my bish, using a nice German sound. Little would become ditu. So we might say something like, how's my little doggy doing? Would you like to go poopsie? You know, and we have to have a raised voice to do it. So Brenda and I both did that, and I think many of you probably do too, but you don't do it in public. Okay,
But
Brenda.
thanks for sharing that.
Yes. Brenda herself, with her endearing qualities or quirkiness, has caused changes in many people's everyday language. All of us have a name, which could be described grammatically as a proper noun, and is capitalized when it's written. So, for example, I am Elaine. If you write it, you put a capital E. And I see Mike there, capital M. I see Kara there, capital C. Here's good old Joe, etc. However, Brenda, while a proper noun, has also become the grammatical category of adjective, which is a descriptive word like funny or silly, and it does not need to be capitalized anymore. So, and that's another thing she did. Her students picked up on that. So, change of topic or addition. While talking about a situation, one can now say, oh, that is very Brenda, small b, or that is so Brenda, or what a Brenda move. I don't have many friends who were so unique and interesting that they have become adjectives. In fact, a threat I now use, and I have to Roger over there, is you are on the verge of becoming an adjective. Thank you very much for listening to all of this, and I hope you've learned some things about Brenda or remembered some things about her that you may have forgotten. So, thank you.
I know you don't like hugs, but I'm going to give you a hug anyway. Thanks, Sue.
Mike, can we have you come up and say a few words, please? Okay.
So I think I will actually keep this at a few words. Let's see if technology is actually going to work for me there. Maybe not. 1 second. I do. And do we have, and we had that, fantastic. All right, Mom. I did have some good pictures. So many of you probably do not know who I am. I am that little guy in the picture over there. As you know, my mom, I spent most of my life probably not being able to get a word in edgewise, so you probably have rarely ever heard of me or from me, but here I am. So last time I did a presentation like this was at our wedding. It was a surprise to everyone that I was doing a PowerPoint presentation at my wedding, but I figured I might as well keep the tradition and do another PowerPoint presentation for the eulogy. So just want to level set with everybody where this is going to be. So we have like traditional eulogy. If we're just like looking at this on a line of like kind of a number line. We have inappropriate in the middle. We have this like constant voice in my head that is like Mike, like screeching out Mike, like something I've actually done wrong. So that's usually a little bit further than inappropriate. And I'm gonna try to like just keep it right on target right there. So I apologize if I get a little bit off in any sense. Don't worry, it's not gonna be that bad. So I decided to call this lessons. So we're gonna go through life lessons I learned from my mom. So first, value of hard work. So one summer, I think my mom got tired of me sitting around playing video games all day. So she decided that I'm gonna sign Mike up for paper route. Now, this paper route was not actually like a real paper route that you like deliver stuff people want. It was more a flyer route where you're just the guy generating like all the flyers they would hand out to all of the different houses. Nobody wanted these, I can tell you that right now, but I have to go and walk through this. So I mapped this out. I don't know if you can see the little yellow line. I mapped this out earlier. It was about over 2 kilometers if you actually go through like every little house in our neighborhood. And we'd spend, I don't know, like an hour trying to organize all these little flyers, and everyone would get a different set of flyers. I don't know why people would get different flyers, but they actually get different flyers. And you walk to every house, and you have to figure out, okay, I'm like 432, okay, they get this, and then I go 436, okay, they get this, and I do this, and this whole process would take, I don't know, about 5 or 6 hours on the weekend. And you're walking around, sometimes it's hot, and you'd get like hot and sweaty. It was like pretty miserable. And I think for the first time I did this, I think I said to my mom after that first time, I'm like, Mom, this really sucks. Like, I looked at how much I made, it was like $2. And then she said, no, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. I'll help you out next time. So I think she helped me out the next time. And we, sat there for 2 hours sorting all the papers. And then I would go and walk out and, deliver all the papers. And I said, Mom, it's like, this really sucks. Like, I don't really want to do this anymore. And then she said, oh, it's not that bad. So I think the next time she did it, and then the following week I was playing video games again. So again, I'm not sure what the lesson here is. The lesson was more like, sometimes you actually have to value your work and don't get paid $2 for like 5 hours of work. It's just not worth it. Be curious. So, some of you know. It's great. My dad and my mom visited us in Portland when we first moved there. And one day, my mom had to ask questions like, why are there matches in the bathroom? And, we had to explain to her, like, okay, well, this is why you have matches in the bathroom. And she's like, oh, okay. That's really interesting. I've never heard of that before. And you'd be thinking to yourself, like, I know most of you are probably asking yourself, like, well, why are there matches in the bathroom? Well, I would actually provide you with an answer to that, which is if you look at the very early chapter of Who Looks Inside, she will precisely tell you what you use matches for in the bathroom, which was quite interesting to know that, like, we provided my mom with information, which she then took and used as one of the specific chapters in her book. And anyone who knows my mom knows she loves using information. And she just will absorb it, and she's like, I have to tell somebody. And she wrote it in her book. So now everyone knows why you would keep matches in your bathroom. Second lesson on be curious. So early on in my childhood, and I had OpenAI generate this, so this was, I used AI to help me with my slide presentation. So early on, we were at Red Lobster, and we had a lovely dinner, and I was like pretty young at the time, and at that time they would bring out this whole like dessert cart, and on the dessert cart were all the desserts they would offer. My mom asked a question, it's like, oh, like that's really interesting. How do you keep the ice cream from melting? At which point the waiter said, oh, don't worry, the ice cream is fake. You just pick it up. It's like, it's all good. Which my mom at that point said, oh, well, look, that cheesecake, that looks really, really like real. How do you get that? she sticks her finger in it, and it's real. The waiter was very nice at the time. He said, don't worry, it happens all the time. I am sure it probably doesn't happen all the time. But so was a lesson of like, sometimes you just gotta be curious and just, touch the cheesecake. Okay, next lesson. Mom is probably right. Growing up, my mom, she really wanted to put me into things that she felt was appropriate. Whether or not I wanted to do it, she sort of had this guiding light of where I want Mike to be. So things she did, she loved putting me into cooking classes. Whether or not I really liked cooking class at the time, debatable. But she loved putting me into cooking because that was her thing. So I was always in cooking classes. She put me into French school, which was good, but I probably did not love French school at the time. I kind of rebelled a little bit against it. And she also said, while you're in French school, why don't we also just amp it up a notch? And you also do band as well, because you're going to love band. I love band, and you should definitely do band. She also put me in piano lessons early on, and I think eventually that kind of faltered out. So I did not really appreciate that Mom was probably right at the time. So we'll kind of go through where we're going with this. So my mom loved Williams-Sonoma. She'd covered the motherland. I think that's the term she would use. Mothership, thank you. She called it the mothership. So she loved Williams-Sonoma. She'd go in there and just get extremely excited. I'm not going to make the same noises she would make about going to Williams-Sonoma. Well, I worked at Williams-Sonoma. So I thought about redacting my wage from this, because it might be tacky, but I actually kept it on there to show I probably lost a lot of money working at Williams-Sonoma. So yeah, I worked at Williams-Sonoma for summer, or actually for winter, sorry. I worked in France for over a year because I think work sent out an email to the whole company one time and said, does anyone speak French? And I'm like, yeah, I speak French, I can do that. And they're like, oh, great, how do you want to go to Paris for a year? I'm like, that sounds great. Kara, do you want to go to Paris for a year? Sure, sounds great. So we ended up in Paris. But I never really did band. That's my mom. She did play flute. I tried to play flute. I was in it for 2 years, and it never really stuck. Although I probably would want to pick it up at some point in time. Oops. You will eat what's in front of you. Growing up, we actually just talked about this the other night. Growing up, my mom was unapologetically would say, here's your food, you're going to eat what's in front of you. She knew I hated mushrooms. I just couldn't get mushrooms, they were not my thing. And she said, no, you know what, I'm going to cook with mushrooms. So she would make a lot of mushroom soup, and one of them was mushroom barley soup. And so she put this whole mushroom barley soup in front of me, and I would say, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to sit here and pick out all the mushrooms individually. I just never really enjoyed it. And it was, not really my thing. Eventually, I've come to enjoy mushrooms. I've come to actually appreciate all the food that's in front of me. But she was very unapologetically just said, this is where you're going to eat. Now, I do have to bear in mind, if the dog wanted pizza, the dog would get pizza instead of the kibble. So the dog might be eating pizza at that point in time. Pardon?
You were getting mushrooms.
Yeah, I was getting mushrooms. I think you've heard about the dogs. Dogs were basically always in her life. I mean, they had Samantha before me. So here's Samantha. I'm that little terror in the background. Samantha clearly looks like this is okay. I don't but yeah. Samantha was very high stressed, probably the most anxious dog you would meet, but a really wonderful dog. Probably way too much dog as a starter dog. I would not recommend Samantha as a starter dog for anybody, but a really good dog. Then got Gypsy. I think my dad told the story of Gypsy at Pals. Gypsy was just a wonderful dog, basically the prototypical therapy dog. You could bring Gypsy anywhere and not worry at all. Just a wonderful black lab. And then we got Delta. I was actually not aware of her nicknames on the letters, but yeah, we had Delta. Going back to the number line at the beginning, so I kept the original thing. So we have like traditional eulogy again. You remember this? Yeah, you remember it. Inappropriate. That's where like I want to like not be. There's Mike, and then Delta like lived her life, sort of like off that number line, and regularly you would hear Delta screamed out in frustration because Delta would do something.
She was a wonderful dog.
Delta was very much my dog and my dad's dog. I don't have any pictures for this one. I'll like leave it this. Hold yourself high. The last few years of my mom's life were like really hard, and I visited her in April, and yeah, like I think like Kara and I, we would call the house every week, and we'd always say like, "Wow, she sounds really good. Like she's doing really good," and we couldn't tell like anything was wrong. And then when I visited in April, and she had these home care workers come in like every single day, and I'd be sitting down, and I'd listen to her talk to these home care workers, and she would just talk to them, and they would eventually sit down. She'd talk to them, and then eventually they leave, and she tell me about this and about how tired she was talking to home care workers, and I'm like, but Mom, like you just don't talk, like just don't talk to them, and like don't ask them about where they're from, don't ask them about their history, don't ask them, how many kids they have. And anyone who knows my mom knows she could not do this. Like she was still herself even until the very end. Like she would always want to know about everyone's history, everyone's life, and she'd always ask about it, and she was always deeply curious. Closing thoughts. A few weeks ago, I'd say like maybe 2 weeks ago, there's a little bird that moved in right on our fireplace in Portland. So we have like this climbing hydrangea, and there's a little bird that moved in. And Kara pointed this out. She was like extremely excited about the bird. And, I was just thinking like my mom always said, I want to come back with my dogs. Or our dogs, like, our dogs live a good life. She's like, I want to come back my dogs. But, like maybe she just, decided, a bird is a little bit more mobile. So she's coming to visit us. And whether or not Kara is like happy with the thought of her mother-in-law visiting us is a different story. But I figured I would keep that in there. She did ask me why I had this picture in there. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Joe, Elaine, and Mike for wonderful tributes that you've gave to Brenda. I think we got a little bit of an inside view as to this really special lady. Does anyone else have a special story that they'd like to tell or share? It's okay if you don't. Yeah. You will? Okay, come on up. Just tell us who you are and how you know Brenda. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Glenda, and I just sat there and thought, I have a story, and Mike already spoke about one. I'm part of the Gourmet Girls, but I'll back it up a bit. How I met Brenda and became a friend for 50 years was we were out with Cam and Louise. Cam and Louise were our really, really good friends. Cam and Bob went to high school together. And we told them we bought our first house. We were so excited. And they said, where? We bought a half duplex in Lakeview. And Cam said, what? My sister and her husband, who I'd never met, they bought a house in Lakeview, half a duplex. So Joe and Brenda moved in Friday night. We moved in Saturday night. We had identical dining room suites, and we shared dining chairs back and forth at dinner parties. Bob and Joe were carrying chairs back and forth. That began a 50-year incredible friendship. And all of what everyone's talking about is this connection, connection Brenda had with people, and she brought them in and she shared them. She never kept her friends to herself. So then she invited me a few years later into the gourmet group because we like cooking. Then I met these amazing women who became my friends for 35 years or more. And we traveled together. So we went to San Francisco, and all Brenda wanted to do was go to the mothership. So we took her downtown, we dropped her off. We said we'll be back in an hour because we're going to do a little shopping. We all split up. Came back an hour later, no Brenda. We had to actually go in and drag her out, literally. She was shopping still. And the other story I wanted to tell was that at a gourmet dinner one night in Glamorgan at their house, a fire started. I don't know if you remember this, girls. There was a fire on the stove. My husband's a firefighter. I had no clue what to do. Cindy's partner is a firefighter. She had no clue what to do. We'd also had a bit of wine. We're all standing there and flames were leaping. The resident 9-year-old came in and said, I think you should turn the stove off and put a lid on the pot. Thank you, Mike. You saved not only your home, these crazy women, but you saved the dinner. And he's gone on to be a good cook. So anyway, I just want to say, like, through Cam and through Brenda, and Pam's become a very dear friend. The Hardys are entrenched in our lives, Bob's and mine. And even though I don't see you a lot, Brenda and I we weren't the friends that went shopping. We didn't have play dates. We did none of that. We drank scotch. She introduced me. We talked about books all the time. We disagreed on film. And I visited her right up to the last couple weeks, and those were our conversations. And about paths we take, and she led me on a path. Oh, Elaine. She also introduced me to Elaine because they needed a house sitter. We needed a place to stay. 20-year relationship there, still. And anyway, I just wanted to share that. She was just such a dear, dear friend. I'm going to miss her very much. I hope I get to have a tipple of scotch with her someday. Anyway, I'm going to really miss her.
Anyone else have a story they'd like to share? Okay. Yes? Okay, come on up. Yeah.
Can I do it from here?
You absolutely can.
My name is Gilles Bossier, and I worked with Brenda Royal, with colleagues before. I worked with her for 20 years, and I'm just wondering if she put my name in her years. Because I inherited her position, and I inherited her office when I was hired full time. So I have already inherited her office. So I was at Montreal for 20 years as a DUFC, etc., as a sessional instructor. And out of the blue in 2005, Brenda decides to retire. Nobody expected this. I didn't expect that at all. And I certainly didn't expect to get her position, because at the time, a 20-year-old sessional was too old to go into a full-time position. And lo and behold, I got hired full-time. And I inherited Brenda's office. For 20 years, I saw work ethics that was mentioned by Mike in action. Usually after the winter semester, there's a spring semester where full-time instructors do not teach. And a lot of full-time instructors kind of disappear. Not Brenda. She was in her office every day, reviewing what she had done over the year and preparing for the following year. And the office was facing south, so she always had these dark shades on. She was saving her eyesight for later years, I guess.
She couldn't find her glasses.
I'm really sorry that she didn't get to enjoy more of those later years. Thank you, Mike, for getting to the bottom of the right hand turn. because I knew about it, but now I have all the information. One last thing is about cooking. We used to have Christmas parties when the Department of Languages and Cultures still existed and was functional. End of story. And one year we went to the new place in Bobo Valley, and Brenda served seafood lasagna. I also inherited the seafood lasagna, and I've been trying ever since to match that supper, that dinner, but I'm not yet to so, thank you all for sharing this.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move right along then. Mike, do you have a slideshow prepared, another slideshow, or was that?
They do.
They do, okay. Now we're going to enjoy a slideshow that will depict Brenda's life in pictures. Okay. Pam, Mike, beautifully done. Beautifully done. Pam, could I have you come up, please, and say a few words? I'll stand beside you.
Will you stay here with me?
Yep, I'll stay with you. Okay.
Everybody knows this isn't my thing. But anyway, good afternoon, everyone. Family, friends. This celebration gives me an opportunity to offer some words of thanks. Firstly, a huge thank you to Brenda's posse. She called it her posse. Virtually everyone that's in this room and people watching virtually, you were her friends, her family. You emailed, you called her, you texted, popped by, shared tea. I'd like to join you for some of that here.
I got a little left.
Yeah, good. And engaged her right to the very end. And when mobility became an issue for her, your interactions gave her purpose. I know she felt all that love. I would like to thank our care workers, particularly Katrina, who managed her palliative care. Louise, my sister from another mother, thank you for tending to my own mom when I was busy with my sister. Many of you have been asking me about my mom and whether she'd be here today. She's pretty frail now. She's 101. And her awareness is kind of in and out. And so there was never really any consideration of having her today. It really, Joe, you're my hero. I can't possibly express how grateful I am for everything that you did for me. The fact she was able to remain at home, which was her wish, is due solely to your care. I hope everyone here will join me in giving Joe a much-deserved round of applause. Everyone here knows how close Brenda and I were. She was my sister. She was my bestie. I looked up to her, laughed and joked with her, disagreed with her. The loss for me is huge. It will take time, maybe a long time for me to heal. But that said, she would tell me to just get over it. She wouldn't want me or anyone here to remain sad. She would want us to pursue our enthusiasms. Painting for me, share a good laugh with friends, try her recipes, listen to some Beethoven turned up loud, learn a new language, try her recipes, read a good book, read her books, have a friend over for tea, and we all know what that is. Snuggle with your dogs. And most importantly, proofread your texts and emails. You know how typos drove her crazy. Oh, if we think of this room as her home, she'd be her usual hospitable self, offering us food and drinks. So with that, let's remember her in the best way and share some food and wine in the reception area. We can then raise a toast and send her a collective cheer. Thank you for coming, everybody.
Great job. You did. Okay, that was great. She did fine. It's not her thing, but she did great. In closing, as we bid farewell to Brenda, may the love and memories we have for her continue on in our hearts. Rest in peace, my dear cousin. To conclude our celebration today, we're going to hear Beethoven's Für Elise, and if I'm saying it wrong, I'm sorry. Once the music is played, please join the family in the elbow room for reception, as Pam said, and remembrance of Brenda. So we'll hear Beethoven, but before I do, I want to mention there's some live plants in the back there, and Joe has said if anyone would like to take one home in remembrance of Brenda and plant it on the tables in the reception area as well, Joe, that if anyone would like to take one home and plant it or have it in remembrance of Brenda, that please do that. Okay, well, thank you all again for being here, and let's hear Beethoven and memories. Let's review the memories in our head of Brenda, and then we'll have some refreshments. Thank you.